Hello, today in this video I would like to cover normal maps. Not only how to bake a normal map, but also what exactly a normal map is. A lot of people think they are bump maps, and I guess they are sort of an advanced version of a bump map. A bump map only calculates or mimics height detail. So there is quite a bit of a difference between a bump map and a normal map. So let's get started on talking about what exactly a normal map is. So what I have on my screen here is a simple normal map, or an example of a normal map. And at first glance, I know whenever I first started understanding normal maps, I would look at these colors and I wouldn't even begin to try to understand what those colors mean. I figured it was just some like programming, the colors are far beyond my understanding. But once I did research and I realized what they are, it's quite simple to understand what exactly a normal map is and how a normal map works. So basically, a normal map, how we have normals on let me jump into Maya real quick just to kind of show you. I'll hide this guy for the moment and let's bring up a sphere. So every polygon has a normal direction. At the moment on the sphere, my normals are all set to smooth. So basically what that's saying is every polygon, when the light hits it, let me make sure I have lighting on. When the light hits it, it's saying, well, this polygon is kind of round, so it kind of fades into the other polygons around it. If I were to go up to my normals, under polygons, normals, harden edge, now we see all these hard edges all around our polygons. And basically our normals now are saying this polygon is completely flat and all the polygons around it are completely flat. So it's giving us this kind of faceted look, almost like a gem that's been cut, like a diamond or something like that. So it's got all these facets in it. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what a normal is. Now, when we jump over to normal maps, what that lets us do is, instead of an entire polygon having a single normal, it's allowing every pixel on our texture or on our object to have a normal of its own. So a normal is basically a direction. So it's saying this pixel, the light will affect it a specific way. It'll bounce off of that single pixel a specific way. So when we think about a direction, we think about sort of like our coordinates in Maya. We have a x-axis, a y-axis, and a z-axis. And that's basically what a normal map shows, but only in color. So if we go to, in Photoshop, if we open any normal map and we look at our channels, we have a RGB, which are all three of our channels, red, green, and blue mixed together. Then we have a red channel, a green channel, and a blue channel. If you look at these channels individually, so let's look at the red channel, we'll see that we have a gradient that goes from left to right. So if we then look into Maya and we look just down here at our little location widget for our grid, or sort of our 3D space, we see that our X is pointing horizontally. So that's basically what the red channel is showing our X tangent, or our X angle, by the amount of red that is in that image. Then if we look at our green, we see the gradient go from top to bottom. So that's going to be our y-axis angle. displayed by the amount of green that's in our image. And then our blue channel is kind of a gradient that goes inwards. And that's basically our Z. That's our depth channel for our normal map. So this will kind of show the Z depth angle of our image. And the reason why the color looks like this is because it's all three of those colors blended together. And this blue is kind of the default blue Z depth. So this is no depth, nothing going on here. So that's kind of the default blue for our normal map. Now once you understand what this is and like how the normal map works, you kind of start thinking about normal maps a little differently. And I've seen a lot of people who are really good at making normal maps use an image like this, and they'll really just sample colors and paint with the colors. So you can theoretically paint a normal map rather than just generating one automatically. So next I'll show you how to generate one, and I'll show you some pitfalls and some common artifacts you achieve with creating normal maps, and how to fix them, and how to kind of create a normal map with few artifacts and still keep very, very low geometry. So let's jump over to Maya. I'll delete my sphere that I don't need anymore. And I have a high geometry model, and I just did this really quickly. And I have a low geometry model. So I want to just jump right in and generate a normal map. There will be some artifacts here, and that's okay. I want to show you those artifacts and show you why they're present and how to correct them. So basically, I have a high poly here that I've created, and a very simple low poly. It's got some problems, and it's going to create some artifacts. I always want to make sure that they're right on top of each other. I want to go in and always make sure I delete my history for those guys, and I want to freeze my transformations, and that's going to zero out all of my transforms here. Just make things clean, nice and neat, and it'll really help when creating the normal map. The next thing I want to do for my object, sometimes this can cause problems, sometimes it's not an issue, but I like to do it just in case. I'm going to select my object, I'm going to go to my normals menu, and I'm going to unlock my normals. That way it'll make sure that my normals can all be edited, they're all unlocked, and that should keep any issues from happening. The next thing I want to do is soften all my normals on my low poly model. And to be honest, I don't know if this helps or not, but it's just something I like to do. It's a practice I like to do. And then I'm going to harden the edge, the top edge of this normal, because that's kind of hard, a hard edge section. So I'll go to normal, I'll select that entire edge loop up there and harden edge. Okay, so now I want to actually create or bake a normal map. And to do that, I need to switch over to my rendering menu set, and I'm going to find that under lighting and shading. And I'm going to go to transfer maps. So basically what this is going to do is, let me go ahead and clear these out. So basically what this is going to do is transfer your one map from one piece of geometry to another piece of geometry. Now you can do this with normal maps, displacement maps, ambient occlusion. Even you can transfer even like a procedural color from one object to another object. So at the very top of this menu, we have a drop-down menu that says Target Meshes. Our target mesh is always going to be the mesh that we want to bake the normal map onto, or we want to transfer the detail to. So that's going to be my low poly model. So I'll select my low poly model. and I'll click Add Selected. And then I have my low model shape there. It's going to output it to UV set 1, which is important for me to mention that I do have a UV layout for my low poly model. The UV layout for my high poly model does not matter. Doesn't matter at all. So I don't even need to worry about that high poly model UV layout. Under my I'll talk about this in a second, but first let's go down to source meshes. Your source is going to be what the detail is on. So you're taking the detail from a source and giving it to a target. So the high poly model is going to be the source, and the low poly model is going to be, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. The high poly model, will be the source, and the low poly model will be the target. I had it right the first time. So I'll select my high poly model, and I'll add that to selected. So I have low model shape and high to shape. And then up here at the very top, again with our target mesh, we have our map 1, which is our UV set that we're applying this to. And then we have a display and a search envelope. Right now my display is set to mesh. Just to get an idea of what my envelope is, I'm going to switch that display to envelope. And basically what that's going to do is give you a distance of how far do you want to search for that, for the information or detail or whatever. And I can come in to my search envelope slider here, and I can alter that. And you typically want that to kind of encompass the entire object. It doesn't have to encompass everything, but it's usually best if it does. So I'm just going to increase that until it's kind of encompassing my entire high poly model. Okay, so I have my target mesh set, I have my source mesh set. I can minimize those guys. And then I'm going to go down to output maps. And the one map that I want to do here is a normal map. So I'll click normal map. I already had that active, so I'm going to remove that one. And you can do normal or multiple normal maps, which is useful. My normal map location, I'm just going to leave this to where the default is. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put it on my desktop just so I can get to it easily. And under file type, I don't want it to be an alias PIX. I want it to be a PNG. So I'm going to name this normal map example, and then we're going to make a we'll make a 2048, or no, we'll make a 1024 normal map. So normal map example 1024, save. So I have that set to my desktop. My file format, I want that to be a PNG file. Include materials, map space. This is going to be a tangent space normal. You can make an object space normal as well, and that calculates a little bit differently. The most common one is a tangent space normal. And if your object is going to be moving around in the scene at all, you always want that to be a tangent space normal. If you have a static object and static lighting, object space normals work really well. But if your lighting in your scene is going to move at all, or your object is going to move at all, you want to stick to a tangent space normal. Let's see, the rest of these I can kind of leave at the default. Under my common output, I want to select my resolution, which is already set to 1024. Keep aspect ratio. I can leave all these sort of at the default for now, and I should get a fairly good resolution out of these default settings. All right, so everything is set up. Again, I want to make sure this shouldn't take too long, but I just want to make sure my progress bar down here isn't covered up, and I will click bake. So that went pretty quickly, and if I, let's Let's minimize that real quick, and I'm just going to hide my high geometry, which I have on a layer. And now we're only looking at our low poly geometry. We do have a few issues here that I want to try to fix, and I will talk about those. So the first issue that I noticed right off the bat is that my little cubes here aren't really working correctly. They don't really look like cubes, and they have like a weird, you know, if I look at them from an angle like this, they don't look too bad, but they're just not acting the way I want them to. So let's take a look at my high poly model and see how we can fix that. So I'll hide my low poly, and let's look at the high poly. So the reason this is happening is two reasons really. The first reason is that these guys are separate objects. They're kind of combined with my my model, but they're also separate. Is the fact that they're at a 90-degree angle. Everything here is at a 90-degree angle. So this is, you know, if I look at this straight on from my front view, you know, I don't even see those guys. And that's basically what's happening whenever I project the normal map, is it's not even seeing them. It'll see them from an angle, and that's just why they're not behaving properly, or one of the reasons they're not behaving properly. So what I want to do is, let's jump back to perspective. I want to go in and give these guys a little bit of a bevel so they're not quite at 90 degrees. So let's go in from a side view and select all of those edges. And I'm going to go back to my polygon. I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Bevel, and then let's take a look at our bevel under our channel box, this Poly Bevel 1. I want to turn off Auto Fit, so I'll turn that off. And with Auto Fit on, it automatically tries to figure out how much you want them beveled, so it keeps you from changing these settings, which is really how much they're beveled. So once I turn Auto Fit off, I can come into segments and change my segments to 2. I can come into roundness and change that, and change the fraction a little bit so they're not so round. So just giving it that little bit of a bevel should help those squares show up more. There's a few things I want to point out that aren't necessarily artifacts, but just things that I want to show that you can do with normal maps. The first is the fact that I have this sort of sharp line here on my model, and that is just my edge right here being a hard normal. So I just went to harden edge on those. You'll see if I select both of those guys and go to normals, soften edge, that that hard line goes away. So I just want to point out that you can use your normals. Your normals will transfer as well as all the actual modeled in information. So I'll go ahead and select those guys again and go to normals, harden edge. Now the other cool thing that I want to point out about normal maps is, as I said before, it's usually projected by the plane of the polygon. So looking at these guys, and if we look at these guys from the front, they sort of look like they're modeled in. We can see them from the front, but if we look at them from the side, we can see that they're kind of just these floating objects. And that's something you can do with normal maps. You know, the normal map isn't going to calculate if there were geometry here. The normal map wouldn't calculate that because it's at a 90-degree angle from where it's projecting, or close to a 90-degree angle from where it's projecting. And if I did have geometry there, it would kind of mess up the way my cubes did up here. So another way we can kind of fix our cubes from having that weird thing go on with them is we can delete the faces that go straight down, that's at a 90-degree angle from our object. And then we can just bring these guys a little closer, like so. And that should help with calculating those normals a little bit better. All right, so that is one issue we had and that will probably be fixed. So let's go ahead and rebake our normals and see if that fixes that issue for us. So I should have all my settings still in place in my transfer maps. I just need to go in, let me make sure my target mesh is still there, my source mesh is still there. I'm just going to go in and rebake my normal map. So I'll hit bake one more time. Okay, so let's hide our high poly geometry and take a look at our low poly geometry. Okay, so our squares definitely look a lot better. They do still have some weird stuff going on with them. And I think that's mainly because our low poly geometry is nice and low poly, but it just doesn't quite match up with what we want. We have this sort of point going right down the middle on our low poly geometry. But on our high poly geometry, it's kind of a flat spot there. So I need to fix that. That's one of the things that I need to fix, and it's just not transferring correctly. So one of the major things to make sure that your geometry is working correctly, or your normal map is working correctly, it has a lot to do with your low poly geometry. You may need to make some extra faces and make some extra edges. It'll add geometry and make it a little higher poly, but you'll get a much better normal map that way. So let's go into my high poly here, or my low poly, I'm sorry, just looking at that. And what I want to do is I'll go to my insert edge loop tool. I want to insert an edge loop right along that hard line. So right on there and right in there. And I'll do that on both sides. And I'll go ahead and take my split polygon tool and join those in the center like so. It looks like I didn't quite get that one where I wanted it to, so I'm going to undo and try that again. Right there. And then I'll join these guys together. Like so. And then I can delete that edge going right down the middle, and that'll make that sort of a flat edge. So I'll just select that entire edge and click Control Delete. So already we kind of see that that's helping those squares a little bit. It does add a little weird shape to our circles down there, so I might have to rebake this to see how it turns out. And again, it's giving us like a weird shape there. But that's okay. We'll just rebake it and see what if that fixes everything or what else we sort of need to fix. So I'll turn my high back on. I want to select my low poly since I did some editing to it and delete my history. I don't really need to freeze my transformations because I have none. And then I'll just bring my transfer maps options back up and click bake. Okay, let's hide our high and look at our low. So that's looking good and looking a lot better than it did before. All right, so we fixed that. Another issue I'm having is the top part. Just if I look over the edge here, the top part just doesn't look quite as realistic as I want it to. So I just need to add some extra geometry there. And the reason that is because, again, this is at a 90-degree angle. And normal maps do not like 90-degree angles at all. So what I want to do is just come in with my edge loop tool. I'm going to add an edge loop here at the very bottom. Double click this top edge loop, and I'm just going to scale it in a little bit. And then that way there won't be any 90-degree angles like so. And then down here we have these sort of an inner bevel and an outer bevel, or a convex and a concave shape. And it seems to transfer all right with a normal map, but it doesn't really look right. And that's just because we don't have the geometry that would allow it to look right. So what I want to do is make that geometry. It doesn't need to be super detailed. I don't need this to be a smooth transition, but I do need some sort of shape in there to help that geometry a little bit. So again, I'm going to select my edge loop tool, and I'm just going to come in and try to match up where that geometry is on my normal map that already exists. Let's say add one in the middle there. And then I can just select that edge loop. I can scale it in a little bit. And then I can select this one and scale it out a little bit. Okay. So we'll go ahead and rebake this. I'll turn my high poly back on. Go to our transfer maps, hit bake. All right, let's turn our high poly off again and look at our low poly. So that's looking a lot better. I could probably come in and add a little more detail in here. And I think I might actually do that so it looks a little more round. So I'll move that guy up. I'll add, I extruded by accident. I definitely don't want to do that. So that should fix that problem. Our top looks way better now that it doesn't have, it doesn't have those black areas sticking out so much because we do have a bevel there. It's not a 90-degree angle. Everything is looking pretty good. Another quick issue that we don't seem to be having, but it can be an issue sometimes, is the fact that sometimes when you have these really long faces or polygons like this, basically, again, at render time, it's going to be tessellated into a triangle, so it can split your geometry right down the middle, and it'll cause artifacts in your normal maps. So sometimes what you need to do is just go in and add a little bit of geometry to keep that from happening, just to break that face up. And I'm creating a lot of edges I don't need here, but I'm going to go in and delete them. I just want to create some geometry for, we'll do some for my squares too. And this isn't entirely necessary here because it's not really a problem, but I just want to show you how we could fix that if it does become a problem for you. So I'm just sort of creating some geometry that goes around those areas where I have my normal map. And then I can come in and delete those sections. So easiest way to do this here with these guys is probably just to select them all, like so. Just by double clicking them. And then I'm going to go to my side view. I'm going to hold down Control and deselect from my side view. Actually, I want the opposite of that. So I'm going to undo. I'm going to go down because I want to delete all these guys. I don't want to delete the ones in the middle. So I'm going to deselect these guys here and then hit Control Delete to delete all those guys around. So then I can come in and just delete these guys, or I can use my merge vertex tool. You know, I probably don't want to delete all of them, but we'll see how this turns out. I may get another problem, but I'm just going to use my merge vertice tool and merge these guys down. Maybe merge these guys up like that. Just try and get both sides matching. So I have my merge vertice tool on my bar, but it's also under mesh tools, merge vertex tool. And these guys I can sort of merge. Oops. It will kind of mess up your geometry here, but we're going to rebake our occlusion map, so it doesn't really matter too much. And I'm going to remake some of those edges that I deleted. I want both sides to match up pretty well. And I think I can get away with doing something like this with those. And then I'll go ahead and see that guy there. And then I'm just going to use my insert edge loop tool again to kind of add some edges where I need them, so I have all quads. Always want to work in all quads. And then I'll use my split polygon tool to sort of fix that geometry. Now, I do have a UV layout already set up, so I may want to go in and revisit that after I make all this change to my geometry. So let's go ahead and do that. So edit UVs, UV texture editor, and it's already laid out. It's laid out all right, but I do want to come in. I'll just select my shell and unfold them again to make sure that I do have, you know, everything's kind of deforming correctly. So it did need a little bit of tweaking, and I would probably come in and even a lot of this stuff out, but just for the sake of demonstration. Oops. All right, so let's look at our model. Of course, the UVs or the normal map looks crazy at the moment because we changed our UVs and we changed a lot of the geometry. But once we rebake it, everything should look really nice. So I'll turn my high poly back on. Make sure visually that everything kind of lines up. I'll bring my transfer maps back up and we'll go to bake. All right, so let's minimize that. I'll turn my high poly off and look at our object. It looks nice. Our normal map is looking really nice. Our squares, everything's showing up. We did have to add quite a bit of extra geometry, but at the price of having a nice looking normal map, I think it's worth it. And it's still quite a bit lower than our high poly model. So on this guy we have 500 tries, which is kind of high for an object like this. Again, we could probably get away without a lot of this geometry because it didn't really give us the artifacts that it sometimes does. But if we look at our high poly, it's at 6,000. So having a 500 try model as opposed to a 6,000 try model, but it still looks like a 6,000 try model is pretty spectacular. So yeah, the next thing we want to do is take a look at this in Photoshop. Take a look at our normal map in Photoshop, and I'll show you some quick things you can do there that are really, really cool. So just before I do that, I want to delete my history. And again, just for safety reasons, freeze my transformations. And I saved this normal map to my desktop. So I should just be able to open up Photoshop. I'll close this guy out. And open up that normal map if I can find it. Here we go, normal map example 1024. All right, so that's what our normal map looks like. Let's go to our layers. So what can we do with this further? Well, if there are more artifacts, we can come in and clean up the artifacts. If you want to control how strong or how, if I find that this normal map is way too strong and I want to dial it down some, or if I find that it's not too strong or not strong enough and I want to make it stronger or, make those details pop out more, I'll show you how to do that. So I'll make a new layer. And basically what I want to do is take this flat blue color here. And basically that's the flat angle of a normal map. So I can take my paint bucket and I can sample that color. So I'm just going to hold down Alt to sample that color. And I'm going to fill it with, or fill my bottom layer 1 with that color. So if we look at layer 1, it's just that color. And what I want to do with my layer 0, or I'll call this normal map, is set that to overlay. And basically that's going to make it blend perfectly with the layer below. And if I want to make this, if I think my normal map's popping out too much and I want to control that and I want to bring that down a bit, I can come into my opacity now that I have that set to overlay, and I can lower the opacity. And if I just save that back out as a PNG, so I just save as PNG, and I'll just save that, replace it, and then jump back over to Maya, and I can go to my material attributes and just update that. You'll see that now my normal map is still there, it's just not quite so strong. Now the same thing goes if you want to make it stronger. So I'll come in to my normal map, increase my opacity. if I want to make it stronger, what I'm going to do is duplicate that normal map. So I'll just I'll right click and say duplicate layer. Normal map copy is a fine name for it. And it's already set to overlay, so you see it just punch out a lot more and get a lot stronger. So I'll save this and we'll look at the results. So save as PNG, replace it, and then come into Maya and double click to update that. So now it just looks a lot stronger. Everything is kind of popping out quite a bit more. So say there's some area that like these squares here that I want them to pop out more, but I don't want the rest of this to pop out so much. What I can do is just jump right back into Photoshop. I duplicated that, and what I can do is take that layer that I duplicated, and I'll just erase everything else except for these squares. So I'll just grab a marquee selection and just marquee around those squares, and I'll invert that selection. So I'll go to select, inverse, and basically that selects everything except for those squares. I'll hit delete, and now those squares are going to get a lot stronger, but the rest of the geometry is not. Another thing I can do is take those squares. Say I wanted those squares to go all the way around my model. Now that I have that singled out, those little squares singled out, I can just hold down Control with that layer selected, Control Alt, and I can bring off duplicates of those. And because they're set to overlay, they're going to blend perfectly with what's below them. You know, I could even put them down here in my circles, and they're going to blend in because it's set to overlay. So I'll go to File, Save As, say resave my PS or PNG file, replace it, hit OK, and come over to Maya and just double click to update, and we see the result. So if you ever need to sort of add normal maps on top of normal maps, you can do that by setting them to overlay, and that way, you know, if you have a texture or something like that, you can just layer them on top of each other. I do plan to go over normal maps more extensively in future videos. I just wanted this to be sort of a basic intro into normal mapping, and these rules really apply to any program, whether it be Maya, if you're using external programs to bake your normal maps like XNormal or ZBrush, same rules apply. But this is just a brief overview of how to bake your normal maps and just common good practices for normal maps in Maya. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned a lot. If you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel, and I will make more videos in the future. If you have suggestions of topics that you would like me to cover, please don't hesitate to comment and let me know. Thank you.